So, I might have mentioned it before, but this past Wednesday night I was at the White House. Maybe you didn't hear, but I was at the White House this week. If you didn't see on my Facebook post, I was at the White House this week, and maybe you didn't read my email this week, but I was at the White House this week. And really, what a powerful, amazing opportunity. Again, thank you to Adam Finkel. Just an overwhelming experience. And so it starts, of course, with a long line outside the White House in order to get through security to get in, and we wound our way through the different rooms. I'd never been in the White House even as a tourist before, so we stopped our way in different rooms and saw so much of the presidential art that hangs on the wall, the famous portrait of Kennedy with his head down, of course. And we made our way upstairs, and there's this lavish buffet of food. And of course, my first question is it kosher? And of course, there's a big sign that says it's kosher under the supervision, here's a big shocker, of a Rabbi Shem Tov. We in Detroit know from Rabbi Shem Tov's, and so it's under the supervision of a Rabbi Shem Tov, came in, I believe, koshered the White House kitchen. And just the most amazing food, delicious, almost as good as my wife's cooking. Not quite, but almost as good. And there we just celebrated the evening and saw so many different people, and then we all poured into one room for the lighting of the Chanukiah. And of course, the president offered a few remarks to begin with, and everyone's arms shot up with their cell phones. I've never seen anything quite like it. So I have tons of pictures of the president through other people's cell phones. It's a fascinating phenomenon. And then we lit the Chanukiah, and they invited a Holocaust survivor up to light the Chanukiah. And here we are in the White House singing the Hanukkah blessings. And of course, what do we go into right after singing the Hanukkah blessings? Maoz Tzur. Now, I'll talk a little bit about Maoz Tzur in just a couple minutes. The choir and the Chazan are going to lead us in singing of Maoz Tzur. But you're welcome to turn with me briefly, if you want, page 308 in your blue Sidurim. Page 308, it talks about in this Maoz Tzur prayer how throughout Jewish history God has intervened to save us from oppression and murder. It talks about Egypt. It talks about the Babylonian exile. It talks about the plot of Haman. And it talks about the Greeks and how they tried to oppress us, and ultimately that's what we celebrate on Hanukkah, is our ability to throw off the yoke of the Greeks and reestablish sovereignty and reestablish our ability to pray and worship in the Holy Temple. So of the 5 verses you see in here, Hanukkah is only one of the verses, yet that's become, Maoz Tzur has become really among the most famous of Hanukkah songs. So as I was thinking, we're singing Maoz Tzur there in the White House. Did I mention that I was at the White House this week? So we're singing Maoz Tzur in the White House, talking about each of the great oppressions of the Jewish people. And this hymn was written probably 800 or 900 years ago, so they didn't know from the Holocaust. Right? And they didn't know from so much of what our people have gone through over the last 800 years. Never does it start with pure oppression. First, it starts with discrimination. And then it moved typically into anti-Semitic legislation. And then it moves to persecution. And then it moves to oppression. And then it moves to murder. But it doesn't start there. I'm thinking about this in the midst of the White House. I'm thinking that it really starts with words. Discrimination starts with words. This past week we heard from a major presidential candidate who called upon the United States to cease immigration by Muslims. And I couldn't help but think, we Jews know what that means. It starts first with words. In trying to protect our country, and in trying to protect our values, and in trying to keep us safe, let us never lose sight of who we are, of what we believe, and of what we as Jews and we as Americans stand for. Let us never forget.